Okay, so I was assigned to create a text set for the Japanese culture, and I chose to create one that would benefit a fifth grade classroom. So this is my presentation, and let's go ahead and get started. Oh, sorry. I forgot with Prezi you have to actually click the arrows at the bottom. All right, so for our read aloud, it is called The Mysterious Tales of Japan, and it is guided reading level V. And basically, this book is a collection of traditional Japanese folk tales, um, which are written in a way that are still true to how they happened when they were told back in the day, like through the word of mouth and whatnot. But they are written with verbiage that is more relevant for the students to be able to understand. The How the book is also laid out is so that it contains folktales that will be relatable to the students, and they are able to take away the lessons and morals from the traditional Japanese folktales and apply them to their own lives. The book is really cool. It has full page illustrations instead of just half page ones or even like little pictures on the side. And it has a bunch of supernatural aspects in it. Like there's one story that involves a priest turning into a fish, and I'm not quite sure how he gets out of that situation. But like I said, it does provide lessons that the students can have a takeaway with. All right, our next section in the set is the stories that I would use for the SOL support. And this one is called You Wouldn't Want to Be a Samurai, a Deadly Career You'd Rather Not Pursue, which I definitely agree with. It is guided reading level Q, and it connects to the World History 5th grade SOL, which talks about understanding the civilizations and empires and the societies in ancient Asia. And that is from 1500, or it's from 1500, not to the present, sorry. I get those mixed up. It's from the beginning of that society to 1500, which is when the samurai were in Japan. So basically what this story does is it takes the reader through the daily life of a samurai and their training, their duties, what they would basically have to go through in order to show that they were worthy of being a samurai. And it explains it in student-friendly terms, and it talks about aspects from living back then as well, so the students can kind of get an understanding of how difficult it was, and maybe kind of rethink how dangerous being a samurai was back then. So they are able to learn about the culture, but also understand specifically about a samurai, and it's has illustrations that depict the different jobs and duties and what I talked about a minute ago. And it just kind of gives them a snapshot of that. And this is part of a series, the You Wouldn't Want to Be series, and there's a bunch of other books about different jobs back in history that it breaks it down into student-friendly language. All right. The next SOL support story is called Grass Sandals, The Travels of Basho. And I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this goes through and talks about the 17th century poet, and it depicts his journey throughout the island of Japan, because as he was writing his poems, he was traveling in order to gain experiences that would give him subjects or instances that would help him write his poetry. And he did write in the traditional Japanese haiku form. So I really liked this story because it allows the students to be exposed to a very traditional way of Japanese writing, and also learn about the poet's travels. So they get the geographical aspect of ancient Japan, but also the poetry aspect of it, which that's why I chose it, because it connects to the English SOL 5.5D, which talks about reading and demonstrating understandings of fictional texts, narrative texts, and narrative nonfiction and poetry, and describe the characteristics of free verse, rhymed, and pattern poetry, which the haikus fall under this category. So the next, and this was guided reading level U. The next section of the presentation talks about the leveled text that I would have in my classroom for the students to read, and these are going to be on their independent reading level so that they would be able to gain full understanding of the text and be able to take away everything that they need to from the stories. So the first story I really not vibed with, because that's not really a professional word, but I really liked a lot because it is about sea maidens. It's called the Sea Maidens of Japan, and their official term is the ama, and these are women that would dive into the ocean to get shellfish, and that was their job. That was how they would provide for their families. And I don't know, it just kind of reminded me of mermaids a little bit, but I know that's not really what they are. But anyways, this story focuses on a little girl who is struggling between working on land in the fields or having to dive into the deep and mysterious ocean to search for these shellfish. And it kind of talks about her internal struggles between wanting to go with the society's expectational job, which is being the ama and going into the ocean, and then her personal fears with actually going through with that. And I really liked this story because not only does it talk about a traditional job that Japanese women use, or I don't know if they still have to do it or not, but this used to be something that they would definitely have to do. And it talks about how sometimes you have to make a choice, and I feel like that's something we always have to go through in life, is making choices for ourselves, whether it be what people like or what they don't like or what goes with society or doesn't. And I feel like the students could really take away the moral lesson from that and apply it to making difficult decisions in their own lives. All right. Next, we have this book. It's just called Japan, but it's part of an informative scholastic series that touches on different cultures. And this is at the guided reading level Y. I really liked this book because it provides a glance at daily life in current day Japan. So it's not so much talking about the historical aspects of the island, but it's talking about things that would be more relevant to us, like the different types of transportation and the education system and what happens in a typical Japanese family, and even holidays, which I thought was really cool because obviously holidays are a big part of every culture. So the reader is able to learn about the Japanese culture in current day Japan, and then kind of think about that in comparison to our own cultures that you go through every day in the United States of America. And obviously there are pictures in the story to help describe what's going on as well. And last but not least, I have my book that would be used for professional development, and it is called Look What Came from Japan. And I thought this book was extremely interesting because not only does it talk about those aspects of kind of what's going on in Japan right now, like daily life and whatnot, but it talks about like the popular things that are going on in Japanese culture and lifestyle right now. And as you might have figured it out from the title, it brings up things that originated in Japan that are now popular all over the world, such as musical instruments, different toys, types of clothing, different ways, or not ways, but different types of art that came from Japan, and now people are using them in everyday life, or they're seen as something that's very, not special is not the, but you know, like high-end art that is now in museums that originated in Japan. And it has pictures of most of these things, which is good because some of the stuff I didn't even couldn't picture in my head because I hadn't heard about it. But it was just a really cool way to make a connection between the Japanese culture and our own, and I think that that will allow students to kind of break down the barrier between a whole other country and ours, and like I said, make those connections so that they have a better understanding of the fact that America is not yes, we live here, but we get a lot of our things from other places, and it's important to remember that. So, I believe that is yep, that's it. So, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.